Hello, this is Mike Lincolnauger with the Short Sale Specialist Network and First Coast Realty Associates. I'd like to thank you for joining us for the Short Sale Basics training session here. Ethan here is joining me. Ethan, introduce yourself and what you do here.
Hi, this is Ethan Gregory with First Coast Realty. I'm the lead processor here at our office. I currently manage over 100 short sale listings at this time, and negotiating with the banks and any various stage of the short sale process.
And Ethan has literally worked with well over 100 short sale files, short sale packages, and that sort of thing. So myself, I've closed over 100 in North Florida here, and obviously, through the Short Sale Specialist Network, we've worked with thousands of homeowners around the country now. So to get started off, this is about the short sale basics. So we're just going to obviously be talking a little bit about some basic things, some very basic things that any agent working with short sales or distressed properties should know. And to start, we're going to go over some different vocabulary. You should definitely know the lingo if you're a short sale pro. So we're going to talk about some of the different terms that you're going to hear used. First is a short sale. Obviously, a short sale is when a seller is forced to sell a property through a financial hardship and a lender agrees to accept a lower payoff amount than what is owed on a property in order to avoid a foreclosure proceeding.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the basics of it. A short sale is where the seller is signing a contract for less than what they owe on it, and you have to get the bank to agree to that, and that's where your professionalism comes in this negotiation process we're going to talk about of getting that sent over to the banks.
And REO, obviously, guys, it stands for real estate owned. That's typically a bank-owned property, and it's gone back. Property that's typically acquired through a foreclosure proceeding. That's commonly how we'll use the term REO. BPO is broker price opinion. Now, broker price opinion is the main valuation method used by lenders, servicers, and asset managers to value distressed properties. An asset manager is a person who is in charge of managing and disposing of assets for banks and financial institutions. Now, these people are not necessarily work directly for the banks. Many asset managers, or you'll hear a common term on asset management companies, these are companies that just their specific job is to do some of the services for the banks. Many of these services include rekeying locks of foreclosed properties, trash outs or clean out the properties once they're foreclosed on, boarding up windows, and most importantly, ordering BPOs or broker price opinions. Next term we have down the line is a deed in lieu. Now, a deed in lieu of foreclosure is a process by which a deed is given back to the lender in a short sale. A deed is written over, deed in lieu of foreclosure, in order to avoid a foreclosure proceeding altogether. And typically, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, there has to usually be only one lender in a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Next term we have down here is a negotiator or processor. There's a few different names you'll hear, typically people at the bank refer to who are working with the short sale files. But, the negotiator / processor / short sale specialist, they're the people at the bank who are processing your short sale file and going to hopefully approve your short sale files.
Yeah, just to touch on that, that's just a generic term that we use in the business for who you're speaking to that is making the decision at the bank, the one who's requesting the documents, countering your offer. They can have any different kind of name over there at the bank, whatever bank it is and whatever title they're given, doesn't really matter. This is just a general term that we use regarding who you're talking to over at the bank that is making the decision.
Absolutely. That's a good point, Ethan, is that usually, even though their title might be processor or short sale specialist, commonly as agents and people in the industry, we refer to them as a negotiator. Even though they may not even be doing any negotiating at all, we usually call them negotiators. Now, the next one down on the list is a promissory note. Now, obviously, being real estate agents, you guys should know what a promissory note is. That's a term that you will hear sometimes when a lender will ask all or part of a deficiency be repaid. They will ask a borrower to take a promissory note.
And on that, there's many other different names for this too. It's called a prom note, a soft note. These are all unsecured notes property is kind of like a credit card debt, where they're asking the homeowner to repay a certain amount. Generally, it's usually not the full deficiency balance, but it's generally a part of it.
And obviously later on in the course we discuss some ways to get rid of that, and hopefully in the future those will disappear altogether. And in some states they can't have those. It's illegal to have those in some states. So cash contributions also occasionally, it's become more common in recent months with one of the largest lenders to hear a cash contribution requested from the seller to approve the short sale. This is typically a few $1,000s, and sometimes it will allow the buyer to make additional contributions to a second lender, that sort of thing. But this is just a solid lump sum at closing in order to approve the file.
And this is most typical when the seller does have some cash in reserves. They're just not able to make their current payments on the house. But if they do have some cash in reserves, they may ask for some of that to get approved as short sale.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's key too, is that if the person is in a genuine hardship and unemployed, you're going to see that much less frequently. And again, the promissory note and cash contribution, those are something that are not even seen in many short sale transactions as well. Next, we have the MI company or mortgage insurance company. Usually we'll abbreviate it and just call it the MI company, the MI. And obviously when there's mortgage insurance in a short sale file, it requires the MI company to approve it, which can take a little longer of a time frame there. The deficiency balance is a term used to refer to the difference between the net proceeds to the lender after all closing costs are paid in the transaction and what the original loan balance is owed against the property. So that's typically referred to as the deficiency balance, or hopefully the dollar amount that the lender will eventually be forgiving in the short sale transaction. Now, hardship, that is a term that's used to describe what financial situation led to the borrower no longer being able to afford to keep the property and being forced to sell the property. We're going to go over, obviously, later on in the course what constitutes a financial hardship. But the hardship is a term referred to as that there. A lender approved is a somewhat controversial term in the short sale industry, but it's becoming more and more common to where a lender will give a general approved price on a short sale property. And this is, sometimes this approval will be the actual price they'll accept. Sometimes, actually the majority of the time, it will have a full net dollar range, net dollar amount for the approval.
And there are some companies that when you're doing short sales, if you submit your packet before receiving an offer, they will get you a pre-approved price, which is for sure lender approved. They'll tell you to go get that number out there, and they'll send you an approval letter within a matter of days. Just depends on what company you're working with. Most of the times, lender approved will refer to when you've been processing a short sale, you've got it approved, but say the buyer backed out. This is the price that you've already known that they're willing to accept, and you can then substitute another buyer in there. And we're going to go over that process later on in another training course.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another term that's becoming more and more common is arm's length transaction. More and more of the lenders are requiring an arm's length affidavit be signed and sometimes even notarized by all parties in the transaction, including the real estate agent. Now, these arm's length transactions, it's a term that basically refers to that, everybody in the transaction, all parties are working at arm's length. There are no side agreements. There's nothing like that. It's all at arm's length.
And that you're not selling your house to your sister or your son or daughter or whoever. That's really what they're concerned about, is that there's not some shady dealing where they're going to get the house sold back to them in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another common term, too, is loss mitigation or loss mitigation department. Commonly, too, also called a short sale department. Loss mitigation departments at lenders just typically deal with, obviously, mitigating loss to lenders. So typically, loss mitigation department will deal with any properties to where there's a need of a loan modification or anything where it's distressed, short sale, anything like that. So when you're contacting a lender, you obviously, for short sale, you will obviously be contacting the loss mitigation department of that lender. Next, the only other term we have on here is a short sale package. I will commonly call and refer to a short sale package as basically all of everything that is presented to the lender in order to ask them to approve the short sale. So we're going to have the homeowner's entire, all of his financial documents, preliminary HUD, typically a broker's price opinion, everything, that we present to the lender. That's commonly referred to as a short sale package. And we'll go over to, again, in other courses about what specifically is included in the short sale packages as well. Next, let's get into some other stuff here, basics. Why would a lender accept a short sale? Why would a lender accept less than what is owed against the property? And there are quite a few different reasons why they're going to do that. The average foreclosure process costs a lender $58,000. This is a way not only for the borrower to cut their losses, but for the lender to cut their losses as well. Another reason as well is high numbers of foreclosures on a portfolio of loans can make the lenders look bad to their investors. This can ultimately hurt their bottom line, their stock prices, and really affect the lenders big time. Another way as well, as we've discovered in recent times, is it can affect their relationship with the FDIC if they don't have capital reserves on hand in the bank, if they're outstretched too much with how much they owe people. So another reason, the other main reason is as part of HAFA and some of the new programs out there, lenders are required to consider by law a short sale in many cases.
And to touch on what you said about cutting losses, right now, and over the past few years, we've been experiencing a declining market. It would be in the lender's best interest to accept a property for sale, what they can get for it right now, than rather have it devalue over more time and not collect any interest or principal payments on that for the time being when the seller's in the hardship. So it behooves them to accept it and cut their losses and move forward.
Absolutely, and they're also, not to mention, they are in the money lending business, not the property management business or property owning business, hence the term distressed property. That is not their job to own properties. They don't want to own properties either. They don't want to spend money also watching a property deteriorate in condition, and many times properties become vandalized after foreclosure and that sort of thing too. There was a statistic recently, obviously the term, things are changing, but at one point it was lenders lose an average of 18% in a short sale on a loan versus 40% in an REO. That's a dramatic difference. So obviously it's in their best interest to accept the short sale on a property. Now we'll go to the sellers. Why should a seller consider a short sale? Now we have this general form here which really just will compare a short sale to a foreclosure. Now this form is actually available to agents as part of the listing course as well, listing program as well. And you'll see this actual form where you can go in and edit it yourself. But I just want to talk about some of the reasons and ways a short sale affects a seller in the short term and in the long term. Now, in short term is credit score. Typically, a short sale doesn't have the biggest effect on a credit in and of itself. It's usually around 50 points. Now, that can vary some depending on the person's credit history. But late payments will typically have the largest negative impact on a credit score and can average literally more than 30 points each late payment. That can be very, very dramatic on somebody's credit. However, foreclosure can be upwards of 300 points and can stay on somebody's credit upwards of 10 years. So that's there's a big difference in there. And if somebody is not even late on payments yet, though, the effect of a short sale is minimal compared to a foreclosure. It's much less if we can do them without them even being late on payments or just barely in default or late. Now, credit history. Now, there's not actually a reporting item on a credit report for a short sale. It'll typically be reported as paid or settled in full or paid as negotiated. But again, there's nothing that will say short sale on their credit report specifically. Foreclosure, obviously, again, that's a matter of public record, and that's a hit for upwards of 10 years on the credit.
It does specifically say foreclosure on their credit report.
Absolutely. And also, too, deed in lieu of foreclosure is a credit reporting item as well. Make sure your homeowners know there's, as part of a program out there right now, homeowners have to have a property on the market for 90 days before the lenders will consider, many lenders will consider a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Homeowners need to know that deed in lieu of foreclosure, as well as a foreclosure, they're very, very similar on the credit reporting, and it is a 5 to 7 year flag minimum on credit for a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And so that's a very, very big thing to mention. Now, employment. For anybody that's in a government job or anything in the financial industry, a foreclosure or bankruptcy has a much different effect on employment, and it can. In some cases, foreclosures or bankruptcies can be grounds for termination or reassignment in some career fields. That's very, very important for consumers to realize, where a short sale typically does not and will not have an effect on that. A perfect example is, this is something that many applications and many things ask people is, have you ever declared bankruptcy? Now, just to accept credit card payments, our company had to, declare that we hadn't ever filed a bankruptcy. That's very big. They do check into those sort of things.
And this really applies to people who have security clearances, people that work for the government or other companies that are very secure with their information about their customers. If you have a high-level security clearance and you have to go through a foreclosure, that does not look good on you, because that person could be perceived as a risk to the company or to the government entity they work for.
Absolutely. And another thing that we don't hear mentioned enough is the moral issue. It's just the right thing to do in most cases, is to also help your lender cut their losses, and for a homeowner to do that, it's the right thing to do instead of just ditching the property. Is to at least try to do some kind of curtail.
The homeowner has to realize that they did sign a document agreeing to repay them for a certain amount, regardless of how they may feel at the time about their personal situation. They did agree to repay something.
It's not always the big bad mortgage company's fault you can't pay, Okay, also, regarding getting a future mortgage, now you don't have to declare to future mortgage companies that you previously performed a short sale. Now, for Fannie Mae loans, though, it is typically a 2-year time period to qualify for Fannie Mae loan after a short sale. And, your credit, a borrower's credit can recover in 18 months to 2 years from a short sale. So they could literally buy a home within that time period. Now, for foreclosure, on any federally mandated loan application, Form 1003, they're required to check, yes, have you ever had a property closed on or done a deed in lieu in the past 7 years? That is key. And obviously, answering yes will affect their interest rate that they receive and cost them more money, and maybe even be grounds for not approving the loan altogether. And that, again, also has deed in lieu on there. Now, 2 years for a Fannie Mae back loan with a short sale, 5 years for a Fannie Mae back loan with a foreclosure, a minimum, guys. That's key there as well. Now, the deficiency judgment. In a short sale, it's typical for the lender to give up their right to pursue a deficiency judgment. Typically, that's usually going to be in the approval letters. The approval letters will typically state the language that the lenders agree to accept this amount as settlement in full of the debt and agree to release the borrower from any future obligation to repay it. Something to that effect. In a foreclosure, in many states, the bank has the right to pursue a deficiency judgment in the foreclosure. That means 4 or 5 years up the road, 10 years up the road even. I forget what the statute of limitations is, but the lender can come after other assets of the homeowners. That's very important to remember. So those are some of the main reasons why a short sale is in a homeowner's best interest to do. Future employment, future credit, future loans. There are numerous why a homeowner should at least consider them, and even to a bankruptcy too. Next, let's talk about a few different alternatives for homeowners that are in financial hardship and need to sell properties, or they're in distress. The first one we'll talk a little bit about is bankruptcy. Now, that's something, obviously, us as agents are not as qualified to talk about as attorneys. You guys know there's a couple different kinds, Chapter 7, Chapter 11, Chapter 13. Again, though, that can be permanent security clearance issues if a homeowner goes into bankruptcy. It's not just as simple as pay a couple $1,000s and wipe the slate clean. It's more complex than that, and in Chapter 13s, some things have to be repaid sometimes. It doesn't totally get them off the hook.
And doing a bankruptcy, that is an alternative to a foreclosure, depending on what type of bankruptcy you file. A bankruptcy does not mean you cannot do a short sale, though. It just depends on how and what type of bankruptcy they are doing. So remember that if someone's talking about bankruptcy.
Absolutely. It doesn't totally rule out a short sale altogether. That's absolutely a good point, Andrew. It just requires trustee approving it. That's a very good point. The next alternative is a foreclosure. We discussed that. That's when the lender actually takes legal possession of the property for a homeowner there, and that's obviously, bankruptcy and foreclosure have the two greatest effects on people's credits typically. That's a pretty common thing there. Now we're going to talk about loan modifications. There's a few different kinds of loan modifications out there right now. One of the biggest programs, and again, programs are constantly changing, so it's up to us as agents who specialize in this to keep track of some of the different government programs and what the different lenders are doing out there. The biggest one now is they're putting homeowners in a 90-day program to get them to see if they can make a lower payment, at least for 90 days. Unfortunately, that's not working with a lot of the borrowers. That's a general loan modification. Now, a lot of them, they try to get the interest rates reduced dramatically, but very few of them currently have principal reduction programs. That's the biggest problem that we're running into is, while, a borrower may be able to reduce their payment $300-400 a month, it doesn't get rid of the fact that they're upside down $50,000, $100,000 or more sometimes on their property. So it's not a permanent solution to that, at least.
And loan modification is only for the homeowners who want to keep their home. That's something that we'll touch base on later in the discussions regarding loan modification and screening out your sellers. And because you don't want to waste your time with someone who's just going to end up doing a loan modification down the road. That's a big thing we want to go over later. Loan modifications, people want to keep their home. It's not to sell it. Absolutely.
That's very key. And the majority of people that are upside down, if they really evaluate their situation, they don't want to keep their homes. Obviously people don't want to have a loan balance for 30, 40, 50% or more sometimes, much more than the value of their properties. Now, the most common forms of loan modifications are typically forbearance or repayment plans. Now, unfortunately, with these, typically they will take the back payments. If a borrower is 4 or 6 months behind, they will either add them to the balance of the loan. So instead of owing $150,000 on a property, $150,000, a borrower might owe $155,000, and that's one of them. That's forbearance. And a repayment plan is when they would take those, maybe 5 or 6 payments, break them up into 12 months, and add that amount onto each monthly payment the homeowner has to make. Now, the problem with both of those, which is unfortunately the biggest, quote-unquote modification that most people get, is instead of giving the borrower a lower payment, it gives them a higher payment than what they actually couldn't previously afford before. So most of these are, they're all just temporary things. They're not permanent solutions. They're very short-term temporary things. And again, the majority of the real loan modifications are not working as well.
One thing you touched on there that you said is this is a permanent solution, is a short sale. You get rid of the house, they forgive you of the deficiency balance, and you move forward with your life. Many of these people have just been in such hard times. They need to have a clean slate in a lot of ways, and you're the one that's going to help them do that by selling their home for them. That's one thing to point out. This is a clean slate, permanent thing that you can do for them to get rid of this home and get them started anew.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the only other alternative they have is deed in lieu of foreclosure. A lot of homeowners think that that is a good alternative until they really look at the realities of it and what it entails. And again, we went over that 5 to 7 year flag on the credit in purchasing a home in the future is huge. And currently in some states, lenders can pursue a deficiency in a deed in lieu. They can. That's very, very common. I know that's about to change with some new legislation soon, but either way, it is a much different impact on the credit either way. Now, next we're going to talk about a few things that are very common that can cause delays in getting short sales approved, or typically will delay the process a little bit there.
As you probably know, in your market, short sales take a good amount of time to get done from the time you receive the actual offer from a buyer and turn it in. You have to get the financial documents from the seller and negotiate it with the bank, which we're going to go over here in a few minutes. And that can take a long time depending on who you're dealing with. So what we want to go over is some reasons that these things are delayed and reasons that there's different timelines with different banks. And so you're able to educate your buyers and your other buyers' agents on, hey, this may take a while, but we're going to try and get this done for you. One of the delays that we have, normally it's a mortgage and insurance company approval. If your loan that you're working for your seller has mortgage insurance on it, that can typically take an extra 2 weeks or so because they have to get their approval as well, in addition to the investor's approval. The negotiations with both lenders, if you have two lenders, can take some time, but negotiating that payoff to the second lender can be a difficult one sometimes. You have to get the second lender enough for them to agree to accept the short sale.
Not to mention, too, sometimes there can actually also be a third position lien holder, multiple liens on the property. And we're going to go over quite a few tactics when negotiating with second and third lenders in the expert negotiations session as well. And another one, too, that will be a common delay as well is, investor approval. Once the lenders actually approve it, typically they're just a servicer a lot of times, and they will have to actually present it to the investor for approval. A good rule of thumb traditionally is a lot of the government-backed loans will take even a little bit longer. If it's actually owned by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, it could take a little longer sometimes. Another reason, too, is a lack of documentation presented to the lender. Incomplete short sale packages. It's very common, too, for some of the lenders because it can be months and months sometimes before they're reviewing the file that the documents you had sent in with the short sale package are out of date. So they are going to want new and updated financial documents. Make sure you educate sellers and homeowners on this reality that, the lenders will want updated bank statements and pay stubs in many cases. So, they will be required to provide them in the future as well.
And having a complete short sale packet is very important. And we have forms that go over what you're going to need for this short sale packet that you submit in some of our document section if you've been through there. And as well, we'll go over them in some of our courses that are online here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, it's very, very important to have complete documentation, complete package ready for the lenders to have them every document that they need. And also, if they ask for some sort of document be provided, that whoever's mitigating these provide the documents very, very quickly to the lender and get these signed, get whatever they want signed off on, get them back whatever they need immediately.
I found that you can argue until you're blue in the face regarding document and say, I've already sent it, or you guys don't need this, or that's just ridiculous. Just forget all that. Don't even use that vocabulary with them. If they want it, you just might as well get it, because they aren't going to move your file forward without what they need. It's just, it just is what it is sometimes with them.
And the other big one is obviously, lack of preparedness and experience on behalf of the agents. Now, this can be a number of different things here. Just lack of general experience in negotiations and how lenders do things. Probably the biggest one that we're going to see is bad HUDs. The bad preliminary HUD was presented with the package that did not account for things like back association dues, tax and IRS liens. There's a number of different things that could be missed on that HUD 1 statement that can just make or break a transaction. So that's something that's also covered in a future session as well. We get very, very detailed on what to put in a good HUD 1 and what should be in a good short sale package to ensure that there are no delays in this process. Because the longer the time period, the greater the chance the buyer is going to back out of the transaction. And that's another thing too. Agents, it's ideal to either mitigate short sales yourself or somebody directly in your brokerage company, somebody that does work with you directly. That way the transaction can be supervised the best. There can be the most accountability. We are regulated institutions. Unlike any mitigation company, there's no regulation or anything. That's a very key thing that we like to point out as well to people. Ultimately, though, that's up to you. If you're not a preferred partner member of the Short Sale Specialist Network, you can use who you like to mitigate your short sales. Okay, next thing we want to talk a little bit about is the short sale process, and how the process will work. Ethan, talk about the short sale process in general from start to finish there.
Well, once you get the lead to come into your system, however you're doing that, you're going to speak to the owner and qualify them for the short sale. That's the very first thing you got to do. Talk to them about their house, find out the situation and find out, what has changed in their financial situation that they can no longer afford this house. And there's a number of reasons that we can go over in another call or training call. And from there, you qualify from the short sale and set the appointment to list the property on the market. And what we like to do is when we meet with that seller at the listing appointment to receive as many financial documents as we can from them that are listed on our short sale package sheet that you'll find in the forms section. If we can get it all right then, that's outstanding. And especially if it's a lender that we can get a pre-approved short sale from, even the better. We'll just go ahead and submit it and see if we can get it, at least get the ball rolling with the lender, let them know that what you are doing with the seller and with this home, so they can either, for one, possibly stop foreclosure proceedings, or two, go ahead and stay up in the short sale apartment, save you some time in the future. From then, you keep on marketing the property until you get a short sale offer. You get the seller to accept a reasonable offer, and you get a preliminary HUD made up. Some people like to use net sheets. We prefer HUDs because that is the exact closing form that will be used when the buyer does eventually buy the property. So get a good relationship with the title company to help you make these preliminary HUDs, and so you can just go back and forth, get them changed if you need to. If you're doing some real volume and you're receiving lots of leads from us, you'll be able to get a good relationship with the title company. Won't mind doing that kind of stuff for you. Next, get your short sale packages submitted to the lenders. You may, by the time in between when you list it and when you get that offer, you may need to update some of those financial documents. You need to include your listing agreement, your offer, sometimes a BPO that you think would help influence the negotiator you're going to have. So make sure you do that. That's all, again, in the form section. Once that is submitted, your file can be set up with a short sale department at whatever bank you're dealing with, or the loss mitigation department. Call back in after a few days after you send it to make sure they received everything. Far too often do I call in and if I fax something in, they're missing this or that document, you just got to resend it. Like I said before, it's not no use arguing about it. Remember, no matter how many times you send it, just send it again and make sure they get it. Some of the banks have gone to electronic systems, making it a little easier to upload and track what you've done. That's a great way. We always prefer that, and there's some kind of accountability on your part and the bank's part. From there, once the file is set up, you'll be assigned a negotiator or a processor on the file who's going to review the file for its completeness and then determine if the seller does qualify for a short sale or in a hardship. From there, you go to the order of the BPO. You'll be contacted by another agent or sometimes an appraiser to value the property. And from there, it goes the file being reviewed and negotiated with your negotiator or your processor regarding the purchase price or any promissory note or cash contributions. Once that's all settled, it's submitted to the investor and the MI company, and then you receive your final approval, and you move forward like it's a regular transactions with the buyers, inspections, and financing.
Very good, Ethan. Thank you for going over that. Now, a couple other things to discuss that are general things in short sale. Many times, as Ethan mentioned earlier, buyers back out frequently in short sale transactions. Once this process goes through once, typically lenders will kind of pre-qualify or give you a pre-approved price that they may accept on the short sale. And that's discussed in more detail in future sessions. Now, a couple things about short sales that I want to mention that are typical of most all short sale transactions and that sort of thing. First and foremost, short sales are typically as-is sales. The seller is in financial hardship and is not able to make any repairs to the property. That should be obviously noted in purchase and sales agreements and short sale addendums and that sort of thing as well. Usually there's no warranties, no home warranties given to the property or that sort of thing. Typically, though, the lenders do like to see a binder deposit. It's a good idea to put a binder deposit with an offer and encourage buyer's agents to, get a binder deposit with the offer. And again, that's going to vary from state to state depending on escrow and laws and things like that.
Yeah, if the lender does see the binder deposit, see the buyer is a little more serious sometimes, and also it gives a little bit for your buyer there to stick around. They realize they're doing something serious by putting some money down, even though they may be able to get it back should they back out, depending on the terms of the contract. You at least have a little bit with them and a little bit of more than just a piece of paper.
Absolutely. So a considerable amount of consideration is ideal with the short sale offer. It shows the lender that they're serious. Now, one thing I really want to discuss that we hadn't mentioned yet is in a short sale transaction, the seller still owns the property. They are the owner of the property. That means they have full legal authority to sell the property, not their lender. Their lender, it's only up to their lender, legally speaking, to say yes or no. Their lender is just agreeing to accept a lower payoff amount on the loan. So, negotiations, there's two steps of the negotiation. The first step of the negotiation is with the homeowner, is with the actual seller. So, if you have a $100,000 property and there's a buyer that wants to submit $2,000 offers, it might not be in the seller's best interest to do that and to take it off the market as well.
And one thing I want to add on to that is you work for the seller here. You sign a listing agreement with the seller. You don't work for the bank. You're just working with them to be able to get this short sale approved. So you got to act in the seller's best interest in terms of accepting offers and negotiating it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that is very, very key. There's a lot of confusion as to, who owns the property. And really, the seller still has the first say-so and the final say-so in any transaction. It is their property. They still own the property. And again, we talk more and more in more detail in future sessions about all these things too. Especially, another thing to discuss a little bit is the timelines. Ethan went over the process a minute ago. Now, HAFA is a program out there that will hopefully improve the short sale timelines. That is the Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternatives Plan, which is part of HEMP, and it's an effort to streamline the short sale process. This is very important, as many lenders are just required to approve a short sale file in 10 days. So you should definitely familiarize yourself there with the HAFA plan in detail. Make sure you're very familiar with it, and obviously it could use a few little changes, but this will become law as short sales will ideally become streamlined. And that process we went over earlier will happen very, very quickly once you submit a short sale package. And so we're really obviously looking forward to some changes with that. And you're going to find, too, that from the time a homeowner misses the first payment until the time the property is taken possession of will vary greatly depending on your, state laws and also your judicial system as well. Especially, some states are judicial versus non-judicial foreclosure, which is basically title theory versus lien theory. In many states like Florida, New Jersey, New York, the process can take a year to 2 years in many cases or more from the time the first person misses the first payment until they're giving up possession of the property. In some states, it's a tiny fraction of that time period, So there are some tactics that you will learn as well and that we're going to teach you as well to delay this process. A perfect example is we had one recently to where we literally got it delayed the morning of the sale at the courthouse steps, got an offer in there like within a couple days, and got an approval in 9 days on the file from the lender, or got a counteroffer from the lender in 9 days. So again, I want to thank everybody for participating in the short sale basics session here. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.